Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the May 1st, 2019 meeting of the Daytona Beach City Commission. We're happy and delighted to have each of you with us this evening. At this time, I would ask that Ms. LaMagna review the procedures for our meeting.
Good evening. Agendas are available in the front of the room on the table to my right. All of the exhibits pertaining to items on the agenda are posted on the bulletin board. Please feel free to view the exhibits at any time during tonight's meeting. You are required to fill out a yellow form to speak before the City Commission during the business meeting. The yellow forms are located next to Assistant City Clerk, Ms. Allison Brown. You must complete the sections that ask for your name, address, agenda item number, signature, and date. The form must be completed and placed in the designated box. Items on the agenda for first reading usually do not allow for public participation. However, there are some instances where citizens are allowed to speak on first reading items when they are considered public hearings. Items on the agenda for second reading are open for public hearing, and citizens may speak at the designated time. Resolutions under administrative items number 10 are open for public comments, and you may fill out a yellow form to speak when that item is called. Item number 7A is your opportunity to address the City Commission concerning any item on the consent agenda. Please indicate on the yellow speaker sheet the agenda item number of the items you are addressing. Items or discussions not listed on the consent agenda will not be heard during this comment section. All citizens completing a yellow form will be allowed to speak for 2.5 minutes. When you approach a lectern, please speak clearly into the microphone and give your full name and address. The 2.5-minute clock on the monitor above and directly in front of you will start running when you begin to speak. Pay close attention to your time. You'll be told when your time has expired. Item number 13 is the public comment forum, and it will convene after the adjournment of the business meeting. This is the opportunity for the public to speak on any issue that's not on the business meeting agenda. All citizens completing the green form will be allowed to speak for 2.5 minutes. When you approach a lectern, please give your full name and address. Disorderly conduct in the public meeting of the City Commission. Article 2, Section 6238 of the City Code of Ordinances reads as follows. It shall be unlawful for any person to behave in a riotous or disorderly manner in any public meeting of the City Commission, or any committee, agency, or board thereof, or to cause any unnecessary disturbances therein by force, shouting, or any other action calculated to disrupt such meeting, or to refuse to obey any ruling of the presiding officer or such meeting relative to the orderly process thereof. Please be courteous and respectful of the views of others. Personal attacks on the City Commission, city staff, or members of the public are not allowed. Please silence cell phones and other wireless devices during the meeting. All conversation must take place either at the lectern or on the dais so that everyone can hear the business being discussed tonight.
Ms. LaMagna, we have a roll call.
Commissioner Delgado. Here. Commissioner May.
Here.
Commissioner Gilliland. Here. Commissioner Henry.
Present.
Commissioner Reed. Commissioner Traeger.
Here.
Mayor Derek L. Henry.
Here. I have a motion from Commissioner Gilliland and a second from Commissioner Delgado to excuse Commissioner Reed. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those in opposition, same sign. This motion carries 6-0. We will now have the invocation led by Commissioner Traeger, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Delgado.
Heavenly Father, look down upon us as we try to do the work of the city. Bless all the people here. Look after us. We give you our thanks for looking after us and for taking care of our first responders and our police and our fire department and our people overseas who are working to keep us free. Please give us the wisdom and the knowledge to decide things for the best of all the people in our city. Thank you. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now move on to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes of the April 3rd, 2019 business meeting of the City Commission.
So move. Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Traeger and a second from Commissioner Gilliland. All those who are in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. We'll now move on to agenda item number 5. It is our agenda. If there's any changes, our city manager will address them.
No changes, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Commissioner Delgado with the motion, Gilliland with the motion, Commissioner Traeger with the second. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those in opposition, same sign. This motion too carries 6-0.
Okay. Moving on, item number 6, we have no presentations tonight, so we'll move on to item number 7. It's the public comments by people addressing the City Commission. During this time, citizens have the opportunity to address the City Commission on any item that's on the consent agenda. I have one speaker tonight, Mr. John Nicholson, who's, I believe, speaking on item 8A.
8A?
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. This tangentially is about this, but it's not. Went to the meeting for First Step. What exactly is going to happen? I understand we're continuing on, but I'm not quite sure if this thing fails, because there's more talk than before. There's been several times that things have happened and they talk about it not going through and whatnot. What would we do with this building if we do all this work and it doesn't open up as a shelter? Thank you.
Well, that wasn't exactly as you said on 8A, and I'd appreciate it if you talk about 8A the next time, John. Thank you. It's not on 8A. It's not.
I have one additional speaker to speak on item 8A. That's Mr. Doyle Lewis.
We will be talking about 8A, Mr. Lewis.
8A. My name is Doyle Lewis, Daytona Beach, United States. I have no physical address because of this city and this county. The reason why I'm speaking on 8A, and I also signed up for 8C, but 8A is a very strong topic for me because of what I've been put through by our leaders in the area. This will not fail. The speaker before me said, if this fails. There ain't no if about it. These are people's lives. The entire reason why I speak as an architectural builder is because of this and FP&L. One of the reasons why I'm talking about FP&L is because they do not own the building. You need to put electronic switch for a generator on that building immediately, because without power, you're not able to actually have people there. If it doesn't have that in a contract, you just made a mistake. You know why I stand here before you? Because I know more than you about building. I know all about FP&L. It says here, they're in control of the power of the building for a homeless shelter. You need to have a generator switch on there in the construction process. If you don't have it, you made a mistake. My name is Doyle Lewis. I know a lot of things about what you don't know. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
Motion
was
to
my-
approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion from Commissioner Gilliland, a second from Commissioner Delgado. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
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 Those in opposition, same sign. Motion carries 6-0.
All right, moving on to item number 9, which is our public hearings. Item number 9A has two parts to it. I'm going to read the first ordinance into the record. It's the Development and Administrative Services Planning Division Code of Ordinances Text Amendment, amend Chapter 10, Alcoholic Beverages, and 102, Vehicles for Hire. This is an ordinance on second reading, public hearing. An ordinance amending Section 10.5, Chapter 10, Alcoholic Beverages of the City Code of Ordinances by including an exception for consumption of alcoholic beverages on commercial megacycles, providing for conflicts, codification, and severability, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
We have a motion from Commissioner Delgado and a second from Commissioner Gilliland. We you have any?
I just wanted to reiterate that they will not be selling liquor at their store, just beer and wine for consumption. And if they want alcoholic beverages, they have to.
Do you have any speakers?
I do have speakers.
Okay. Will you
Fine.
come back?
Our first speaker is Johnny McGill, and on deck is John Nicholson.
Evening, everybody. My name is Johnny McGill. I reside at 252 Ellicott Drive in Ormond Beach, Florida. Wanted to come here today. I've been living in Ormond Beach, Daytona area now for 4 years. Moved here from just south of Austin, Texas, which is a pretty progressive city. A lot of fun things going on. Great city to go visit. And I've always made up my mind that whenever I moved somewhere, I would never try to turn where I moved into what I moved away from. But I will tell you, having lived in Boston, having lived in San Diego, having lived in New York, living all over the place, this is the type of thing that we need, especially in the East Main Street area, to bring more people down, let them enjoy yourselves, something that's a little bit more progressive. And again, in that area, I've seen the guys from the Pallet Pub put up a very nice establishment, something that is going to be attractive of a different type of clientele than our traditional Main Street clientele, which is, I believe, while they're really working hard on East Main. Peanut and George's is another bar. Again, both of them, according to my knowledge, have decided to not sell alcohol except for beer and wine because of the fact that they don't want the hard liquor drinkers. And again, I think anything aside from a very large, catapult that'll throw you up into the sky and a NASCAR-themed restaurant on one corner really is going to be helpful for getting that area not only cleaned up, but bringing a whole new class of people into that area and a whole new class of tourists and another destination for people to come to Daytona Beach and spend their money. So I'm very much behind this, and I hope you guys feel the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is John Nicholson, and on deck is Ashley Garrett.
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. I, too, am in favor of it. It's something we need. It's something that's unique, something that's different. But I do have a problem. We discussed sort of kind of almost maybe about their having alcohol other than beer and wine on the vehicle. That, because of the last 20 years and we're not enforcing the alcohol licenses on Main Street, it's a continuation of that. But specifically what I came up for is this is just for the megacycles. It is not for taxis, buses, Ubers, or anything else, correct? It is so defined as a singular exception, correct? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ashley Garrett, and on deck is Doyle Lewis.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Garrett. I live at 231 Riverside Drive, Marina Grande. I am in favor of this. I am a local real estate agent. I also run a local TV show called Spotlight Daytona, and I spotlight different businesses in the area. And I did spotlight Hop Cycles in the Pallet Pub. And I will say prior to this business coming to Main Street, I would not go to Main Street. I would not feel safe going to Main Street. I would not take my family there. But since this business has come, it's attracting a completely different crowd. So I am for this, and I hope that you guys do the right thing with it.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Our final speaker on this item is Doyle Lewis.
Hello, Doral Lewis, Daytona Beach, United States. When I first heard this, I thought it was going to be a nightmare. I've watched so many laws get put in place and no one regulated anything. This is why I thought this might be a nightmare. And it's very confusing because a lot of people just say, oh, they got beer and wine on the megacycles, so we can do that too. We have these nice cup holders on our bicycles too. As long as it's regulated and it's on a fixed route, I don't have a problem with that, but you also should regulate how many they can have on the bicycle per person. As far as hard liquor, I would not suggest that, because if you really look at most of the alcoholic or any kind of medicines, it says you are not supposed to be around machinery while you're consuming it. What is a bicycle? It is a machine. You have one too many, you step up, you fall off bicycle. Where's the driver looking? In front of them. So regulate it very strongly in a certain area. I understand the banking situation and how East ISB can work on this, but without regulation, you better have some really good insurance, because how many hours are they going to work with the alcohol available, and how many drinks can one person have on the same bike? And guess what? The hotels will tell you, when the residents are gone, you get to clean up after them. If they leave a whole case of beer in your bicycle, what do you think the driver's going to do after he gets off of work? Thank you very much.
That was my final speaker for this item.
All right, Commissioner Traeger, you had some questions.
I understand they're going to be selling beer and wine from a store they have by the megacycles. Will they be selling hard liquor too, or will the people have to bring their own hard liquor with them?
If I could add on to that question, is it a package license? They can take it off premises, or is it an on-premise license like the rest of the places on like most places on Main Street? Like if you go into Cruisin' Cafe, you can't take that drink out of Cruisin' Cafe and get on the megacycle because it's a violation of their liquor license. So I think whether it's a package component or not, I think is an important part of that question as well.
I don't think it's a package place.
I can tell you what the ordinance does. The ordinance essentially creates an exception to the open container law. So it allows open containers on megacycles as they're defined by state law. It doesn't get into the licensing requirements which are issued by the state. I recall the owner of the business that will be submitting a license. Are they here today? So that they can speak to their business model. That'd be great.
It was my recollection they were not in favor of hard alcohol, right? They wanted beer and wine, and they didn't favor.
So,
Can you state your name and address for the record?
sorry, Krista Goodrich, 2800 South Peninsula Drive, Daytona Beach.
Tom Caffrey, 816 Main Street.
To answer your question, the Pallet Pub is a separate entity, and it has a beer and wine license. We do not intend to sell liquor there. They can't leave the Pallet Pub with alcohol any more than they could leave Cruisin' Cafe. If they're drinking something at the Pallet Pub, they drink it at the Pallet Pub. It's bring your own on the bike. We don't provide anything that they bring on the bike. So that answers that. As far as if we were in favor or not, we weren't sure because we hadn't had it brought up until the last meeting. Where we kind of stand on that now is if someone brings a Coke and we're saying you can't have liquor, well, if they're sneaking vodka in there, then we can't regulate it and monitor it effectively. So if we're going to do it, let's do it. And that way, if they are drinking liquor and they're starting to act a little crazy, we can put our safety monitor in place and make sure that they behave themselves.
Great.
Do you have any other additional questions?
No, that's what I was concerned about because I knew you had like a beer and wine thing, and I had a question about the hard liquor because that's entirely different license.
Yeah, we don't have a liquor license, and they also don't leave with the beer and wine anyway.
So you have consumption on premise.
Consumption on premise, beer and wine only.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional questions or comments from the commission? Okay, hearing none, all those who are in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those in opposition, same sign. This motion too carries 6-0.
Okay, and the second part of 9A, which is the Development Administrative Services Planning Division Code of Ordinances Text Amendment, amend Chapter 10 Alcoholic Beverages.
Where is that at?
It's the same item.
Oh, okay.
This is an ordinance on second reading, public hearing. An ordinance amending the Article 4 of Chapter 102 of the City Code by redefining pedal buses as commercial megacycles and revising certain regulatory provisions, providing for conflicts, codification, and severability, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
I have a motion from Commissioner Gilliland and a second from Commissioner Henry. Do we have any additional questions or comments? No speakers. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those in opposition, same sign. This motion also carries 7-0.
Okay. Moving on to item number 9B, it's the Development and Administrative Services Planning Division, Minto Tomoka Parcel B, Second Amendment to Minto Tomoka Parcel B Plan District Agreement. This is an ordinance on second reading public hearing. An ordinance approving the Second Amendment to the Minto Tomoka Parcel B Plan District Agreement to allow clustered townhomes as a permitted use on the property and incorporate additional residential lot development criteria, authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to execute the Second Amendment to the Minto Tomoka Parcel B Plan District Agreement, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from, we'll say Commissioner Delgado. I'll take a second from Commissioner May. Do we have questions or speakers, I mean?
I do have speakers, Mr. Mayor. I do have Mr. Rob Morrow here if you have any questions.
Okay.
Our first public speaker is Henry Beck, and on deck is Arthur Morris.
Greetings and thank you. My name is Henry F. Beck, Jr. I'm a retired United States Army Special Forces, retired Orange County Deputy Sheriff. I signed up to come to Margaritaville Latitudes for obvious reasons, to be a 55 gated plus community in a secure neighborhood. I've lived here in Volusia County for 35 and a half years, and I was a deputy sheriff here at the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, so I know the area and I'm familiar with it. When I did sign up for this, I signed up for what I stated, a 55 plus gated community that is secure. I received a letter in the mail about cluster homes and cluster townhomes, and I looked at it with, I was quite amazed. I wasn't sure of what I was reading. I looked up cluster and I looked up townhomes, but I could not find them together. So it's what Minto Homes is doing, evidently, and the board has already approved 5-0, these townhomes. I'd like to know how many townhomes per acre they're going to be. Will they be rental properties or will it be individually home-owned? That's a big concern with not only me, but other people that live there. And if so, I needed the cluster townhomes defined. No one knows what they mean by it, or how many units will be per acre. So with that in mind, I'll lead the Board of Commissioners to do their thing. I'm just here to find an answer. What is a cluster townhome and how many will be per acre? Thank you, and God bless America.
Okay, thank you, and we'll let their representatives answer that question when they come forward. Okay. Next question.
Our next speaker is Arthur Morris, and on deck is Eric Moen.
Yes, my name is 73 Island Breeze Avenue. And the reason I'm here tonight is because I've not been able to get any information relative to the letter that was disseminated to the residents. That letter that was just mentioned. I went into contract on the purchase of the unit there in March of 2018. The contract was accepted and binding on March 12th of 18. I didn't receive anything relative to any development in the area since that time. I closed on the unit in February 13th, and during that year that we were under contract, I continued to ask, what are the developments in the area, what's going on, etc., and I was able to get absolutely no information, and nobody knew of anything. I went to the sales office many times, etc. I was told, well, there was a meeting in January that everybody was on notice, and it was over at the Holiday Inn. I said, well, I didn't get any notice on that, and I was told, well, that's because you weren't a resident at the time. I explained, well, I was a contract owner of the unit and the lot and put down substantial dollars on it, so I should have been informed ethically. I should have been informed that something was going on, but I couldn't do anything. As late as this past Friday, I went over to the sales office and asked specifically about the letter that we got. Nobody really knew anything about it. I said, what other developments are there? Are they going to be in these undeveloped areas that are contiguous to where I'm living? And they said, no, but we'll find out. We'll call land. I went back to the sales office on Monday, and asked, well, what did you find out? They said, oh no, this is relating to a phase 3 development, which is way down the road. And I said, so it has nothing to do with the area that right now all of the homes are? And they said, oh, no, nothing at all. I came to the city hall and I looked at the file. Went through the file, and nowhere in the file was I able to find a map of the area which specifically defined where this development was going to be. The file was sizable. There were multiple copies. I could see the minutes of the meeting, etc. And they talked about particular lot and block or blocks. And
Thank you, sir.
Time's up, sir.
okay.
Sorry about that.
Our next speaker is Eric Moen, and on deck is Al Berg.
My name's Eric Moen. I live at 182 Island Breeze Avenue in latitude Margaritaville. I just wanted to mention, I know with the proposal that's coming up, they're talking about the clustered townhomes in Phase 3 and then also 2 clustered townhomes in the area where they have the model homes. So my house is adjacent to the model homes, and as a homeowner, I'm fine with what they're doing here. We've been very pleased with the developments that they have done. We know this was something that is a change to what they originally planned, but we've not had any reason to believe that it's going to be something that's going to dramatically adversely affect us. And honestly, my home's right behind where these will be built. If any house is affected the most, it would be mine. So we're very much in favor of what they're doing. We would ask when they make the contracts with homeowners that if the goal is for homeowners to park within the horseshoe area of the clustered homes, that be in their ordinance or in their contract, in their document. If only guests are allowed to park on the street, that be in their contract. And if a homeowner's car is found on the street with the IDs that allow them to get in to the gated community, that they would be warned, because the one concern is the aesthetics of the community. So that would be my one ask. I think in the full details of the ordinances, it does describe the clustered homes. I think Alan will speak more about that, but thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Al Berg, and on deck is Kathy Erb.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Al Berg, 133 Island Breeze Avenue in latitude Margaritaville. I spoke at the Planning and Zoning Board against the Minto development because I couldn't find out any information. However, I was put in touch with Dennis here, who I think will probably address some of the concerns, and he answered a lot of my questions. But it was until I met him and found out a little bit more about the development, I was very concerned. I echo Eric's comments also about the parking on the street. I don't think that's such a hot idea, but if it's for the tenants and the visitors, and that the residents that have to park in the rear of this cluster site home, I have no issue with that. Yeah, I don't believe that these cluster homes are as good as what's there now. They are smaller lot areas. The lot depths are shorter. The lot widths are less, and the setbacks are 10 feet, not 20. But all in all, I've got to give kudos to Minto and the developer for following up on all my concerns that I've had with the home. Many of the homeowners, if they were here tonight, would also echo my statements as well, because Minto builds a quality home, so I'm sure that what they're putting in here is going to be quality. So I spoke against it at the Planning and Zoning Board. I was the lone wolf at that board, but there are some other residents here tonight. But I am concerned about the rentals, and I'm concerned about the street parking, just how that's going to exactly be monitored. That's an important issue for me, because my experience has been people with rear-loaded houses all want to park in the front, and what was originally the concept ends up that they park in the front of the house and not the rear. But my kudos to Minto. They do a great job. They follow up on things. This is a quality developer, and my hat's off to them, and I recommend that you go ahead and approve this project tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next speaker is Kathy Erb, and on deck is John Nicholson.
Hi, Kathy, 189 Island Breeze. Eric spoke earlier. He kind of lives this way from the models. I live this way. They plan on putting these cottages, as they were presented to us, in Model Row. There's probably about 10 models right now, so they're also going to stick it there, and then they're going to build other homes going down. They're going to the reason they're going to start these cottages in 3B, is my understanding, is because they're a lot cheaper. Costs go up, obviously they want to go cheaper. But to stick 4 cluster homes, which they called cottages, in with all these other homes that we worked hard and paid for, and I just believe it's going to bring the value down. And when I was at the meeting, I would say at least 80% of the people were against it. Minto is fine. They do a good job. But stick the cluster homes where they're going to build them, because eventually in 5, 7 years, whatever, they're going to sell all these model homes. After they sell all the homes, the model homes are going to be sold. You're going to have 4 cluster homes in an area with 500 other homes. So I think it's going to bring the value down. I think it's going to be like a Where's Waldo? You're not going to be able, it's going to stick out. I think more people are going to buy the cottages. They're going to rent them out. That's not the development that when I read online. When I got all my knowledge about building here, it said nothing about putting cluster homes in this phase, nothing. We have to abide by all the rules that were stated when I bought, but they're not abiding by their rules, and I'm against it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is John Nicholson, and on deck is Doyle Lewis.
You're against. Okay.
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. I put the paper in with the idea of asking a question, and then Rob was here, so I went and asked him, and he said he did have a meeting with these people and they were for it. Now, the questions are coming reminiscent of what happened 10, 15 years ago when people were blindsided by what the city commissioners did. They weren't aware that these things were coming through until the night of the meeting. I would ask that perhaps Rob have another meeting, because it doesn't sound like 80% of the people are for it. It is a change. We had a mental picture of Margaritaville. I understand the need to change the makeup with the impact fees, et cetera. Costs are going up. If they confine it to the new location, I wouldn't have a problem at all, and I don't think anybody else would. It's these 4 homes that seem to be the sticking point, and once you sell them, you can't tear them down. It's not like a model. So I would ask to have another meeting so that they can get, these people bought into an idea, and this is not what they bought into. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final speaker on this item is Doyle Lewis.
Good evening, Doral Lewis, Daytona Beach, USA. I grew up on a large piece of property. Very large, very little house. There's an old saying, protect your boundaries. That way, it takes them longer to come over, and it takes them longer to take your stuff. If these model homes were there and they were sold a bill of goods, I don't think this should be allowed if that's the case. Stick to your plan. It's just like the First Step shelter. You keep changing your mind, you keep making things cost more and longer. I understand about the tax base. I know why they're trying to change it. They ran out of people with lots of money to buy the big houses. But that's not what you okayed way back last century. Do you understand what a development is? It's a long-term commitment to make sure you don't change your mind every 15 minutes. You know what Rothschilds did back in 1913? They made 13 banks to run this country, and they still run them. Now, that's a long-term commitment. Now, if there's only 4, then how about building them a bigger house across the street, helping them move and pay them some money? It's like a wagon with 3 wheels. There's supposed to be 4. You keep changing your mind on people. Stick to the program. If you can't stick to the program, drink a lot more water. Because water is actually 90% or 98% of your body. Thank you.
That was my final public speaker on this item.
Mayor, Commissioners, Rob Merrill for the record with Cobb Coal, 149 South Ridgewood on behalf of Minto Communities. A few questions were raised. I'd like to try to answer them. And I unfortunately, when I get the agenda packet, a lot of times I see page numbers, so I could refer you guys to them, but there's like 400 pages. So I'm having a hard time getting you to the right page. But towards the back of the agenda packet on this one, we have some architectural exhibits that you can look at about the paired villas. Basically, you're going to be seeing the exact same sort of architecture that you see at the existing Margaritaville project. And essentially, this is a variation on a theme, if you will, of what's called the paired villas, something that we already had in the approved PD. And they're reconfiguring basically the same type of footprint with the same architecture. It's going to fit in, I think, nicely with the community. I think when we had a meeting back at the end of January with more than 100 people. I think 2 of them came out with some questions, or 3 tonight, a couple of which were at the meeting and have since decided this is a good addition to the community. All the rest of them who are not here, I would suspect probably are in fact satisfied. Henry, I didn't get your last name. The first of our residents that came up and spoke was asking some questions I wanted to answer. I think that he had questions as if he was not able to make it to the meeting because he had a lot of questions that the sales center, I guess, couldn't answer for him. The biggest of which, I think, and probably the most important of which was, are you adding units or adding density or adding homes? And the answer is no. This is simply a different housing product. It's going to be blended within the community, much like the other 3 products that are there now. This is something that folks came to our sales center and said they had seen elsewhere. We hadn't done yet. I think we saw them in Texas or somewhere else, the way that they'd configure these. Kind of gives you a little bit more of a neighborhood setting, if you will, around the paired villas, which are clustered together in what's called a cluster townhome. I can't tell you how to define that other than to tell you if you look at the way it's laid out in the agenda packet, it's basically the same product that's kind of turned sideways with sort of a shared driveway through the middle of it. So another gentleman asked a question about the parking. Two people did, I think. We actually have in our Declaration of Covenants and Restrictions the restriction that says the on-site or the on-street parking is for guests only. We have places for residents to have 2 cars in their garage and 1 outside in the driveway. So we have parking for 3 already. So I think that shouldn't be a problem. Somebody mentioned the different values or the effect it might have on other people, this additional product. I would say, first of all, intuitively, this developer has thousands of more homes to build in our community, and I can't imagine they're going to build something that's going to foul the water and spoil their ability to develop the rest of the project intuitively. Secondly, I would say to you that we heard that happen, we heard that sentiment at our neighborhood meeting, so we hired an appraiser, and we've given you a report that the appraiser looked at the different product and said it will not, in fact, affect anyone else that had products that weren't exactly like the ones that they had. Some have paired villas, some have a couple of different types of detached housing, all of which we think blend very well together, or we wouldn't be here asking you for permission to change the PD to allow those. So I think that handled the parking question, the value question. These homes are somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 square feet, so it's a comparably sized product to the paired villas. I'm not going to stand here and tell you it's affordable housing. These are housing that's in the same range as the paired villas that you have now, maybe slightly less, but very close. And again, the look of it, the feel of it is going to be very much the same as the theme of what you see out there now. If you haven't visited this project, you really should, and I think you'll get an impression. And so hopefully the positive sentiments that we've gotten tonight and then the questions that have been raised are answered. And if you guys have any questions for me, I'm happy to give it a try.
I have a question. It looks like they're all on one street or two streets.
No. So what you see is one set of the cluster townhomes in the model center. So when the previous speaker talked about those in the model center, what might happen afterwards, the rest of them are going to be in the third phase, but they can be anywhere throughout the community. We've got 3,400 homes that we are entitled to build on this property, and depending on what the market brings is how that's going to play out. Yeah.
Can't talk.
Yeah, so she's right. So to the extent we're going to other phases, it answers your question, but it doesn't answer it completely because we got a lot more area to build out. So we're not going to tell you that there are going to be some mixture of the different types of housing products. It's what the market's going to bring to us. But it's limited to the number that you guys said that we could build. We're not adding any units. That's not part of this request.
Does anyone else have any other questions of Rob? I'm going to allow the gentleman who spoke first to raise one additional question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Please, just come.
State answer.
Yeah.
No, sir, you did not ask my question.
Okay, sir, if you can come to the...
Come back to the mic.
You're going to have to come back to the mic.
Thank you. My name is Henry Beck. I live at 158 Coral Reef Drive, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question was, define what a cluster townhome is, and I looked it up, and I couldn't... I was lost. And I think it's what it comes to is they're going to be able to build more homes on 1 acre of land than what they're currently doing.
Okay, all right.
So I
Thank
tried-
you. You can have a
Thank
seat.
you.
Thank
I did try to answer your question. I'll try to do it from a different perspective. The answer to the question is no additional units per acre. 0. Same number of houses, same number of units. All we're doing is reconfiguring a product that we're already selling now differently in terms of its positioning. No more houses.
And the way I understand it is, it gives them a different feel to where they live is more to make it
Right.
seem more like a, I don't want to call it a neighborhood, but like a community.
Right.
In the way that it's laid out.
Inwardly. So instead of outwardly onto the street, it's inwardly into their own sort of area where they have their own little private street. It's a little different way of doing the same thing, really. So I hope the answer to your question is clear. We're not adding units per acre, because that's when I said density, that's what I was talking about.
There is a rather technical definition of a clustered townhome dwelling in the PD amendment.
Thanks.
I'm sure you're aware, but I can read it for the...
Yeah, I just didn't have that in front of me.
Right. So a clustered townhome dwelling or townhouse dwelling is a residential building with at least 2 and not more than 8 attached single-family dwelling units, where each dwelling unit is located on an individual lot separated by party walls and clustered around a rear yard motor court. So there's your technical definition.
Thanks. Yeah, truly, I apologize for the gentleman not being at the neighborhood meeting, and I'm happy to go offline with him and go through the product and explain it to him better. The sales folks that he visited, I guess, didn't really have that information in front of them, unfortunately.
Like that, you may want to.
Yeah, so I can give you everything.
Okay.
Maybe we can sell you one.
No, he already owns one out there.
You can have more than one.
Yeah, okay.
Can I ask you one more
And then
question?
he'll have to rent one. That's not what they want. Okay.
I missed something. As it relates to rental property again, people can do what they want with their own property. Is that how it works?
Well, so there are limitations on rental, and we have those in the documents as well, and you have them in your ordinances as well.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I missed that one altogether.
Okay, thank you very kindly.
Thank you.
That concludes our public comment. At this time, we will raise any additional, allow any additional questions or comments from the commission. Are there any? No one else has any additional questions? We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those who are in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, this motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 10, which is our administrative items. Item number 10A is the Development Administrative Services Planning Division Integrated LPGA rezoning to Plan Development General PDG and preliminary plat. This is an ordinance on first reading. An ordinance amending the zoning map of the Lands of Inlet Code to rezone 391.8 plus or minus acres of property generally located west of North Tomoka Farms Road, east of LPGA Boulevard, and north of West International Speedway Boulevard from SFR5 Single Family Residential to PDG Plan Development General District, authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to execute the integrated LPGA Plan District Agreement with American SW30 Investments LLC to develop a mixed residential development and approval of an integrated LPGA Phase A1 preliminary plat, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith and providing an effective date. That's weird.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Gilliland and a second from Commissioner Delgado. Do we have any questions or comments from the commission?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could make a comment. Back in March, the folks from Public Works submitted an application to the TPO to look at getting a stoplight at Grand Champion and International Speedway. At certain points in the day, it's almost impossible to get out on ISB and make a left, from Grand Champion. It's a 4-lane divided highway. Traffic moves through there very, very quickly. That stretch of road from 95 out to the I-4 spur has had numerous accidents and a surprising number of fatalities. It is a safety enhancement, as we have submitted the application to the TPO. Slowing cars down through there, we think will help. It is particularly dangerous for bicycle and pedestrian folks that do tend to traverse that area a little more often than you would think. And I'm not sure how this is first reading, but I'm not sure how we do this moving forward. But as this property develops, this developer needs to be responsible if the light is not already in place to put that stoplight in, because any additional trips out of there makes it even more dangerous than it currently is. So I did have a brief conversation with Mr. Merrill about this, who's covering for Mr. Watts tonight. Mr. Merrill also has somebody in this area that's going to be doing some development. But as we move forward, we need to make sure this is codified someplace, that responsibility, it will take years to get this done through the TPO process. We have started it, but to move your way up the priority list and then get funding is something that simply takes a long time. Depending on the speed at which this might develop, that need may be more urgent than what the TPO process would allow. So at this point, I'd like to go on record as making sure that, we recognize the issue, and that as we move forward, that we do find whatever way possible to ensure that, whomever is going to develop that property is going to be responsible for putting in that stoplight.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I was not aware of that as that big of an issue, so thank you. Do we have any additional questions or comments? Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0, and I concur with your sentiments about the developer needing to be responsible, so we need to make plans for that.
The public hearing is set for May 15th. Moving on to item number 10B, it's the Development Administrative Services Planning Division, Williamson Crossing, First Amendment to the Plan District Agreement and Preliminary Plat. This is an ordinance on first reading. An ordinance approving the First Amendment to the Williamson Crossing Plan District Agreement to allow increased business signage, add additional uses, and approving the Williamson Crossing Preliminary Plat, authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to execute the First Amendment to the Williamson Crossing Plan District Agreement, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
So moved.
We have a motion from Commissioner Delgado and a second from Commissioner Gilliland. Do we have any questions or comments from the commission? Okay. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0.
The public hearing is set for May 15th.
And actually, as Parker's running out the door, could I request that particularly for the self-storage area, that you give us some sight lines from, my understanding is this will be tucked in behind the racetrack's gas station. We don't allow these types of uses on major thoroughfares. So if you could give us some renderings of what it would look like from Williamson and from LPGA, that would help us.
For the record, Parker Minchenberg, 1729 Ridgewood Avenue. Rob, I can probably get something done, but this building from Williamson is probably like 50 feet or 40 feet short of the 500, so it's very close. These things are very expensive to do, to have somebody do one. I can't do them in my office. And then from the LPGA side of it, there's the racetrack gas station and the fuel, basically canopy, and it's kind of behind that. In addition to that, both streets have the 50-foot scenic setback. So, I'm not one to try to get out doing work, but it's not that easy to come up with these pictorials from the street.
And this is Lot 4?
Lot 4. So it's not along the frontage. It actually is going to have kind of a flex space building, lots 1, 2, and 3 on the LPGA part of it. And then you've got the racetrack at the corner. And then Lot 4 is slated to be potentially an ABC liquor store. And then Lot 6, the same developer, Unicorp, is putting up another flex building that all these things will help block it. So, I'm trying to get some relief from doing that because I think it's going to be very well screened behind the canopy at the racetrack. And like I said, it's not that easy to.
Okay. Well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to ask.
Okay.
But it is a use that we don't generally allow in, to be totally frank, I think now that one's going up at
Mason. I designed that one, and that was the one that kind of tilted it, where now we have the 500-foot.
Yeah.
But this one, I think, is one other point I want to make is both LPGA and Williamson have large ditch sections, so they're even further back from the highway. And of course, that's in the right-of-way, so they're not counted. I did include building elevations for the building, and when you look at it, it looks more like an office building than a storage building. It's 3-story, it's a air-conditioned structure, no outside storage that's visible, so it really looks like an office building, 3-story office building, in my opinion.
That's page 458 in our agendas if anybody's looking. But it's it is tucked in. If you look at the page before, you can see that it is kind of diagonally behind the racetrack gas station.
Hopefully I begged enough to not have to get you perspective. I did all right?
Done okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
See you next time.
Yeah.
Moving on to item number 10C, it's the Development Administrative Services Planning Division, Grand Champion Combined Tracks 26, 28, and 29, Plan Master Development Agreement Extension. This is a resolution approving the reinstatement of development rights for the Grand Champion Combined Tracks 26, 28, and 29, Plan Master Development Agreement for a 5-year period from the date of this resolution's approval and providing an effective date.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Gilliland and a second from Commissioner Delgado.
I do have speakers, Mr. Mayor. Our first speaker is Mary Ellen Johnson, and on deck is Robert Beer.
Hi, I'm Mary Ellen Johnson. I live on Champion Ridge Drive in Daytona Beach, so I have a lot of concern about future growth. As from what I see and what I've heard, there's potentially 400 new homes that are going to be built that are going, I don't know of any other access point other than driving by my house. There may be others I'm not aware of. My concerns about this are, I've lived here for 3 years, and my concerns right now with our development as it is, the lot sizes, I've talked to realtors who say over the years they've seen lot sizes get smaller and smaller and smaller. I can barely fit a lawnmower between my property and my neighbor's property, so I hope that that's something that doesn't continue to happen. The street width, I've heard talk about parking on street being an issue. That's a huge issue now. So having 400 more homes, residents driving by my house, it would be a nightmare. Items that haven't been addressed, and our development is supposedly completed, but we have sidewalks that have never been finished. The developer is long gone, and I don't know when, I can't even walk from one street to the next without having to walk across the lawn, the grass, the sidewalks have discontinued. The light on ISB, we were told at one point that if we wanted a light there, it would be our responsibility because it doesn't affect anybody else. It greatly affects businesses across ISB as other residents as well. So, I just have a lot of concerns. We've already got enough issues with parking. We've got townhomes that have nowhere near enough parking. Every time I go to a HOA meeting for the last 3 years, that issue comes up about parking.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Robert Beer, and on deck is Jack Roos.
I'm going to assume that's me. My name's Robert Beebe, 541 Champion Ridge Drive. I'm also the president of the Grand Champion, Homeowners Association. I wanted to thank you very much for bringing up the comments about the traffic light. My concern is in 2004, I believe it was 2004, when the developer first got approval for a traffic light, it's been 15 years, no traffic light's been installed. We've been told that if we want to pay for a traffic light, I believe the estimate was around $300,000, we could get a traffic light if we wanted to pay for it. So what I'm going to suggest and ask for is before any further development is allowed, that the developer not promise to put in a traffic light, but make them put the traffic light in before any start of any further development. I'm all for developing the area. I know there's supposed to be a second entrance on LPGA, but I don't think it's going to alleviate the issue we have. We have an issue now, as you mentioned. Putting an entrance in LPGA is not going to help our area. We still have a lot of problems. When I came to this meeting, I was at the light. There were 4 people. 3 were attempting to turn into LPGA, and we have many people making U-turns at that same intersection. And I probably sat there for 5 minutes waiting for all the traffic from the light from Tomoka Farms Road. It's a horrible situation. And I would hate to see someone get killed before any action is taken. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our final speaker on this item is Jack Roos.
My name is Jack Roos. I live in Grand Champion, 130 Glen Eagle Grand Drive. I'm also on the board of the HOA there. I'd like to thank Commissioner Gilliland. That's encouraging that we're talking in that direction because it definitely is needed. And I actually got an email today from Jessica Ottaviano. Anyone know Jessica? She's a communications specialist at Department of Transportation. And one of the questions, we've been asking her questions now for probably a year. One of the questions that I posed to her yesterday was, is there any stated obligation or agreement by this developer community to pay for a light if their project is approved and begun? Her response is, the original permit included a traffic signal stipulation for the developer to install once warranted. I think the point that the commissioner made and Bob make and I make is you got to take out the once warranted. It's warranted. I was very disappointed, quite frankly, with a lot of the parts of the proposal. Some of them were process. Let me talk about the process piece first. There was a hearing in February of 2018, not a hearing, a public something or other. And the only people invited to that were people from Grand Champion. We have 350 homes in Grand Champion. The other 1,500 homes in LPGA that are going to be affected by this community weren't even invited to come to it.
There were only 9 people who attended that hearing. 3 of them were board members from Grand Champion. We very strongly talked about this traffic issue and about the need for infrastructure and that stoplight. In Exhibit E, in this proposal, it listed our names as being at that. It said that the comments were there. There were no comments provided. So were those comments ignored? Were not being shared with you? I don't know, but the process is not good. The question is, why aren't the Latitudes homes, the Mosaic owners, the Bayberry owners, us, why aren't we all invited to a hearing before all this takes place? This, to me, seems like a real rush job to get this through. When I see May 15th as the next date, I don't think they've done their basic due diligence in terms of getting public feedback. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is this whole thing about the traffic. They made a lot of, there are a lot of statements in the proposal that actually make it sound like the traffic signals isn't needed. I wish we had a map in front of us with this. If you can imagine Tomoka Road, LPGA, all the way around, and I-92. Imagine all the homes, Grand Champion 350, this new development 600, Mosaic 500.
Thank you, sir. Your time has expired.
Thank you.
And Jack, I did forward your questions over to Cobb Cole, so you'll be getting responses.
Okay, thank you.
And that was my final speaker for this item.
All right. Okay, well, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional questions or comments?
I have a question since I'm the newest commissioner here. So how do we keep developers accountable when they say they're going to do A, B, C, or D? What is our recourse? What do we do? Once it's done and it's finished?
You have to have in the agreement that they're required to install the signal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have that in there, then it's up to us to be sure that that signal's installed during the time they're in construction.
What about the sidewalk situation?
The sidewalk, we probably should have had a bond out whenever they did the construction. It's some time ago, so I'm not sure in this case, but I've got it on my notes to go back and check and see the status of.
Yeah, the sidewalk issue is in Grand Champion where the developer went bankrupt.
Okay.
So they didn't finish. There was a lot of things the developer was supposed to do in there that they didn't do. So, but this, and actually 2 items ago, this is just an extension on the old agreement to be able to do something with this property. The 2 items ago, when we get it, was kind of where I wanted to bring up the stoplight piece because that's related to the new density that will be created if this continues to move forward. So, but the development agreement, we need to figure out how to get that in there, and I'm not sure that is this going to be a county prop share arrangement?
It is, but we're gonna need to be a part of that, particularly because of what we have currently.
And then do we have a sort of a checkout process? We literally do like a checklist of, okay, everything is done as per contract?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So in order to compel them to get the light, what are you saying that we have to do?
I'd put it in the approval. I don't know of any reason it couldn't come back in.
You mean even in this next meeting?
Yes.
So, I mean, we can't just talk about this. This has to be addressed now. I mean, if we're going to address it, because then they'll have the approval.
This is simply a resolution extending the development rights. If they were to come back to do a development which is not consistent with these development rights, then we'd have to do a PD and we could address it at that time.
So there's no other way for us to address it other than to say we don't approve this and they come back? We don't have that? Yeah, I'm missing something.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is a little more complicated. It's not your normal development. This is where a DRI, I believe, is this the one where the DRI got stopped by the state, Jim? You want to explain it?
Yes, sir. Okay.
If you don't have this adoption,
They can't-
then you
they
can't go
do it
back
back
and
and do it.
and do it like we're talking about.
Okay.
I'm Jim Morris, Deputy City Manager. As the manager explained, it's a big field as it pertains to this property. So you had the LPGA DRI, Consolidated asked the commission in place at the time to dissolve the DRI. They did. Obligations that were part of the DRI were then also dissolved. Under that layer, you have what someone mentioned in respect to a developer that went bankrupt. So the improvements that should have been sidewalks, particularly, weren't finished. In respect to the bond for the subdivision that's been developed, it's before my time, and I don't know the answer to the question, but I will look into that. Ordinarily, you do have a developer's bond to assure improvements that if the developer doesn't do it, then the city can compel that by utilizing the bond. This agreement had what I believe is an odd provision which says if all of the development isn't done, then the development expires. So when you look at the map, you'll see part of the property was developed, and that's where these folks live. And other parts of the property weren't developed, so that under its terms, it expired. And whenever this came to the attention of the city attorney and I discussed the fact that probably there are still rules there because people relied upon them, but when you look at the paperwork, the rules are gone as it relates to development rights of anything. And the way that our PD process works, that's how that sorts out. The resolution before you basically extends the agreement that was already adopted by the City Commission. Now, someone coming in to make changes subsequent to that, and there will be additional development. Each development that comes through will have to go through the proportionate share process with both the county and the city. As you all probably know, the county collects the bigger share of the money. And as it relates to the term of warranted that one gentleman mentioned, the warrant is what's called a warrant study, and traffic engineers actually look at the situation and determine whether or not a light is warranted. And I will say to you over and over again, through the years I've done the kind of work that I do, I see traffic engineers say a light isn't warranted when every person you can find would say, what are you talking about? Certainly it's warranted. And there are also safety exceptions that can be raised, and Commissioner Gilliland did speak to that. But to get from where things presently sit, there's no responsible developer there. There is a developer in the wings that wants to bring a part of the property forward, so additional development, even though it seems counterintuitive, may help the problem in the area to be solved. For the folks that are there, in their homes with partially completed sidewalks and so on, they had the same development rights, or the people that developed their property had those rights, and those are the people that went bankrupt, as I understand the story. The balance of the property has to have some applicable land use, and currently it has, or would have, if this resolution passes, the same rights that were there before expiration of the agreement because development wasn't completed. It is a confusing situation. It's not one that you ordinarily see, but that is just the circumstance of this particular thing. So this is the first step towards perhaps finding resolution. And I say perhaps because there are so many little pieces that have to be addressed. All good points have been made by both the commission and the citizens, and we will look further as it relates, we being staff members, we'll look further as it relates to the traffic light in any way that we can do to assist that and get that part done.
Are you suggesting with the new development, when we move forward and put the lights in with the new developer, that it'll actually ease some of the traffic of the previous? Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is presently the property is static. There's no development rules for it, so it basically sits there, and there's got to be some use asserted to the property. The resolution simply reinstates what people knew was supposed to be there whenever they bought, but it didn't get finished for whatever reason. So that unless you just place, and you couldn't, I don't think realistically, place the obligations on the people that currently live there and say, great, it's your problem. They've already expressed to you, I think, that they don't want to be told, well, it's your problem, go fix it and pay for it. But unless something changes, you're not going to get the problem addressed. Partly it relates to an incomplete road network system. You heard a reference to connection to LPGA and completion of the access to US 92. The DRI that was dissolved had a complete road network, but it stopped mid-process, so you just basically come to the end, literally come to the end of the road, and there is no forward movement in that. So the status of the thing tonight is simply to reinstate what was previously approved. It doesn't increase what was proposed to be there. It's the same numbers. Now, I know that Mr. Merrill has talked about making changes to some property, and you may see that come forward. That's the developer that I referred to in respect to what may happen in the future. And Mr. Mayor, if I may, I know Commissioner Traeger had her hand up. May I answer her question? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, is there a developer in the wings for this property right now?
Well, the property, so you've got portions of the property are developed. Those are the people that live there now. And when you look at the map in your package, you'll see it's a sort of serpentine piece of land. So a portion has been developed, a portion has not been. And Mr. Merrill had come forward in respect to a portion of the property that hasn't been developed with the intent of trying to change the rules and regulations that might apply to that. A part of the concern we as staff had is to make sure the people that live there now have notice of those proposed changes, have the opportunity to comment to you. And as a staff, we sent just letters of notification, typical, just an ordinary mail letter, to the folks that we could identify in the subdivision, and that's one of the reasons they knew, and the city actually has an email system that's working to notify people too. So folks would know what was going on and could come and let all of you know what they think, what their situation is, and so on. And we've heard things tonight that are probably new to us, but we can certainly try to address them.
Is there a specific developer interested in that property at this time?
Mr. Merrill brought somebody forward. I don't know the name. It's just someone, he came in, and it really, the discussion was trying to amend the property that's not developed without addressing the property that is developed. And at that point in time, that's when the question of what we're doing tonight came up.
Would this new developer be required to post another bond, being as that bond from the old one?
Yes, ma'am. They will, as a part of the plat. And what I can say to you today versus another day is we'll make sure that the money is there.
But that's only for his development.
Only for his development, for his portion of the plat. That's
It
true.
will not cover what's happening.
It would not.
Now, what, if we were not to approve this, it would leave a real hole in trying to solve some of these issues with other developments that come in, and it's ultimate improvement of the intersection at 92. So it doesn't put us in a, if we don't do this, then it leaves a real hole, so we wouldn't be able to solve some of those issues.
All right.
What happened to the bond of the old developer?
We're going to go back and find out how this all occurred.
Yeah, because it's probably insurance company involved in it
There may
somehow.
be something or there may not. I don't know exactly what took place during that time.
And you have a bankruptcy proceeding that
Yeah,
affects things
which
too.
is- Complicates it
I
more.
believe it was a South American company, and they basically just stopped responding.
Yeah.
Mayor? No, sir. No.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. If there are no other comments or questions from the commission, we're going to take a vote. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Okay, moving on to, you don't have another item, do you? Commission comments. Do we start with Commissioner Delgado?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had two things that I wanted to bring up in front of the commission and get some consensus on. The first thing I wanted to bring up was the First Step Shelter. I read the article in the paper yesterday in which Mr. Jallis, I guess, offered his resignation and made some comments. I think they're probably directed primarily at me about some comments that had been made at the city commission meeting. And I read the newspaper article, and then not suggesting the newspaper article doesn't summarize the whole story, but I did also watch the meeting as well, so I could get an idea of what went on. And I appreciate, Mr. Mayor, how you stood up for the work that we've been doing for the First Step Shelter. It occurs to me that there seem to be people on that board who would like to dissolve the board or stop the work that the board is doing, and that causes me some concern. I think maybe there was an underestimate of how much work is involved. As a commissioner, we have the benefit of having great staff that do the work for us for the most part, and it would be very, very difficult for people who do it as a part-time position to do the full-time work that's required to get a program off the ground. So my thought is, and I would like to get the input from the other commissioners, is my preference would be to ask Mr. Chisholm to come up with a plan to present to us about taking back the project and basically finishing it and then handing it over once we have it done. It seems to me if we're going to take the licks, we might as well be sure that we get the project done. We've already invested a lot of time, energy, and money. I'm scared to look up and meet Commissioner Gilliland's eyes because I know that he's the, knows how much money we've invested in this, and I want to make sure that comes to fruition. So I was disappointed when I heard that they might vote to disband the board. I don't think we should allow that to happen. I think that we've been the kind of the leaders of this motion. I think we should consider taking it back, having our staff and our people work it up and get it to a position where we can then turn it over. Hopefully that will speed things up. Hopefully our staff will be able to get it back on schedule and back on track, and then the fundraising can be like an executive fundraising commission of people who aren't trying to run the shelter or manage things, who are really just out there trying to get buy-in from the community. And Mr. Mayor, you had really good ideas about, go to the people who've given $100 and say, could you do a little bit more? Could you give another $100? Things like that. I mean, that's what the First Step board should be doing right now, is fundraising, and that's what I was concerned hadn't been occurring. So I think there's still a lot of opportunity for people to participate in the fundraising part of it. But I think we should look into taking it back and finishing the project here in the Daytona City Commission, rather than letting it go awry. So what I'd like to hear from my fellow commissioners is there an interest in doing that? What do you think, Mr. Mayor? And then if we're in agreement, maybe ask Mr. Chisholm to come up with a proposal and present it to us about how we could go about taking that back, executing it, and then getting the shelter handed over to Catholic Charities or whoever is going to ultimately run it. There.
So, we're in year 3 of an 8-year, $400,000 commitment to the shelter. Because remember, when the county starts paying, we got to pay 400 for them to match. So even though our agreement says 5, we're in it for 8. There's $1.2 million that we've paid so far. There's no strings attached to our money. It's not for operations only. It's not like it can only go to Catholic Charities. So I'm not exactly sure. It'd be nice for them to have a nice fat reserve when they open, to cover, shortfalls. When Catholic Charities presented to this commission, one of the things that they mentioned was that in some of the other shelters that they run, that the reliance on public dollars generally goes down to about 50% after a few years of operations. I don't know that maybe it isn't a good idea to reach out to Catholic Charities and talk about their fundraising that they've used at these other shelters to figure out what was successful, that any of that can be replicated here. I'm hesitant to bring the shelter board responsibilities back into the city, because what you're doing is number one, there's a lot of legal consequences to that, because they've got our money. We don't just get the money back because we said, hey, we changed our mind and give us the money back. There's also money that was given to the shelter board from other parties that could be compromised, with a change in structure. I'm not sure what the answer is. Mr. Mayor, I believe there's going to be a workshop or something next week.
Next Wednesday.
And I think that I think we'll know more after that meeting. I think that it's clear that there will be a change. My biggest hesitation to bringing the First Step Shelter Board responsibilities back to the city of Daytona Beach is us assuming responsibility for all the additional, financial obligations. We said we would provide the building. The Hall and Ogle plans are our obligation to provide that to the shelter, to the First Step Shelter, entity. We got a bunch of pushback about the kitchen, so we threw another couple $100,000 of taxpayer money to get the, turn it from a cold kitchen and, just where you're serving food that's brought in to having cooking facilities. Right. There's a lot more expenses that go along with that. I don't know if the price that was quoted, and by the way, I was another one who expressed concerns about, the leadership below the board level at, within the shelter organization. I think that we owe it to the board to have their workshop and hear what they come up with. I do think there will be a change. I'm not sure what that would be. I don't think there's any chance of this thing not getting finished and not opening. But I do ponder whether or not expanding the relationship with Catholic Charities might not be a bad idea.
For me, if you want my opinion, would be, and you asked for it, was that I'm hesitant to have residents of Daytona Beach take on more financial responsibility. There are other cities, and when I research more on the homelessness issue, they're coming from all over. And then we continue to take a disproportionately long share of it, a big share of that, including staff. And I think that I like the idea of people who are skilled at a certain function should try to manage that. So Catholic Charities seems to be the entity that's best skilled and equipped, then let them go with it, or anybody else who has the experience?
Right, I'm not proposing that we take on pledge additional resources beyond this, whatever staff would be required to help execute. My concern is that if there is delay in the First Step Shelter, it's going to, with the board, it's going to lead to delay in moving forward and opening. And I mean, we'll ultimately, I think, bear the brunt of that criticism for that. But ultimately, it will be our citizens, our merchants, all the people who've been going along with us on this ride who experience the frustration when, it doesn't open on time. It opens, a year, 2 years late. So that was my only concern. Is I agree with you. I think it's very unlikely this doesn't get built. My question is just, does it come in remotely in the timeline that we talked about? And if the city and our staff can help make sure that happens, then I look at that as a way of safeguarding the money and the time we've already sunk into it. So, we certainly, need to wait and see what comes out of the meeting, but I just kind of reading the tea leaves and seeing what some of the people were saying, I feel like that they may be a little bit adrift there. And, I just think maybe as a contingent plan, we need to have something in the works to step in and, set that course straight, because, we've promised to our citizens who've trusted us as we've spent more and more money, we've promised that we would open it. We promised them we would try to open it this year, and we've been falling behind on those deadlines. So, I would like to have a contingency plan in place, that if something does happen or we're concerned, we can step in. But, I'm just one person, so, it's just something I think we need to think about. And maybe we revisit it next meeting when we have the benefit of this. Or Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you have any insight into this, but I'm just concerned that there's going to be more delay. And I know that the public's, they're stretched pretty thin on this, and we've asked them to be patient, to wait, that good things are going to come. But, if we fall behind too much, we're going to really lose we've lost a lot of momentum. We don't need to lose any more, especially because fundraising is so important, and keeping people excited about the project, keeping it in the forefront of their mind is really important if we're going to do good fundraising. And from what I saw in that meeting, the fundraising efforts have just not been anywhere near what they need to be. So I don't know the way to reignite that. I think having a good executive fundraising committee is the first step to that. But anyway, that was my thought. So I don't know, Mr. Mayor, do you have any?
If I could throw my sort of worst-case scenario contingency is that some of the $1.2 million that we've given to the board already is used for the furnishings and whatever else is needed to make it truly turnkey for Catholic Charities. And then when we hit the fall of this year and it's ready to open, if there's only going to be our 400 and the county's 400, and that only funds 50 beds, then it opens in the fall as a 50-bed shelter with that money guaranteed for 5 years. That's the fallback to me.
Okay.
And we don't have to put any more money in than what we've already committed to, which is $3.2 million in obligation for operations, plus, something similar to that for the construction. So,
Because aren't we burning cash every day, though, that we pay employees to work there, that the shelter's not open? So if that takes longer time, we were burning more money per month than we were generating, and we don't have like an income to offset that.
and to what I just described, to me, that's the worst-case scenario.
Okay.
But you stay on time, it is ready to open, we are, ready by the wintertime to be able to help some of these folks. I still have the concern that it's going to primarily be a jail diversion program and not really the program we had envisioned. But getting it open and operational is key at this point. And you're right, we really just can't afford another delay.
Okay.
Does anybody else have anything else? Because I want to try to address some of it in when I talk. So, anybody else have anything? Wow.
And then, are you ready to talk about this, Mr. Mayor, or you want me to finish my points? Were you going to?
No, we'll stay on this, and I'll go ahead, and then you can come back.
Okay, all right.
So we'll finish this topic, at least for our time for tonight. Okay. First thing I want to say is that we have to realize that the board is somewhat frustrated. And I think they have a right to be frustrated because this project has taken a long time, and they have been working as a board on a very regular basis, and the project took time, and they didn't really have any control over any of that. I think the situation with Mr. Jallis, this whole process, as I said yesterday, is a deeply ingrained in our community, and it's a very political process. And as I said before, each meeting that First Step has, Mrs. Zafaro is there at the meeting, filming the conversation and writing an article in the paper. So it's political. And Mr. Jallis, you know, it wasn't apparently a good marriage. So I think all of that needs to be stated between First Step. But First Step was sort of in a situation where, you know, they didn't know when the shelter exactly was going to be open, but they needed to have someone in that role to start raising money, but also in the role to do many of the duties that, perform many of the duties that Dr. Durham was performing. So that responsibility did become somewhat of a financial drain on the city. Mr. Jallis, however, revealed some, you know, personality concerns as it relates to comments that were made in our last meeting, because some of the things that Commissioner Delgado said, I guess, didn't sit well with him. And I basically said, you know, that's the nature of that type of job. You know, why would you think you're going to have a job and there's not going to have some tension? So he basically had, in my opinion, what I refer to as a meltdown or a temper tantrum based on something that was said in a commission meeting. Things are said every day all over social media and all over the community, and pretty much revealed that it wasn't a good marriage between him and the board. I was perpetually trying to push Mr. Jallis towards what the board hired him for, which was to raise funds, whereas he kept taking his duties over to be more concerned about what type of building was going to be built, what the procedures were, and many of the things that he stated about that he's complaining about or unhappy with had a lot to do with those issues that really he wasn't hired for. So that's one part of the issue. And so to his credit, I don't think it was a good marriage, and then he is out trying to raise money for something that's not built. We all know that's difficult. It's not an easy task. So this is a very nuanced issue. I don't think he's a great fundraiser, and he kind of alluded to that. Maybe a better job for him would have been to be the guy that was running the day-to-day operations. That's more or less what he was accustomed to, I think, at HUM. It's a different kind of job. What we needed was a fundraiser. We still need a fundraiser. As it relates to taking the project back, I think first thing we need to do is give the board an opportunity to work through some of the crisis that it's facing. We need to be able to have the same, they're all elected people pretty much. And elected people they're not used to being staff. They're not staff, they're used to having staff do things and execute a plan, give their ideas and the plan be executed. So we need to answer some of the questions and the dilemmas that they have raised legitimately. Are we a board that's indispensable? They don't seem to really understand that we are, as a board, critical to the success of the shelter based on the fact that we will create the policies, we will oversee what it is that First Step does, and those things have to be explained, and they have to buy into that and see the role of the board as critical. So I agree with Commissioner Gilliland. We have to give the board an opportunity to determine whether it's useful. And if they choose to relinquish their role, then we would be forced to do something different. And I don't see what the difference is, whether they choose to relinquish it or whether we say we want to take it back. I agree wholeheartedly that the manager should develop and start considering contingency plans, which might include something like a jail diversion plan, or like something that's run in another community, but something that we as a board could be agreeable to, that would be successful, that might still be able to meet the overarching goal of that we had as a city. I think Catholic Charities would be ideal. I think I should reach out to, and I had intended to do this, to them to see if they might be of more help as it relates to fundraising now. One of the things that we could consider, and because the board feels as though maybe we were just chosen because, and it was a good idea on our part to have each city to put a person on the board, but we might consider redoing the board altogether to say that the board would now consist of people who are more in the Mike Panaggio train of thought and not elected people. But we would allow each city perhaps to find a person from their municipality that they believe would bring that type of experience, that type of expertise to the board. The board would conceivably still have the same oversight from us. We don't have to have elected people on that board. But what we do have to have, because we work very hard to build the measure of consensus that we have from the municipalities. We have to remember that we do want to continue to have them to be partners and to believe in the project. So I don't think it wouldn't be prudent on our end to yank it away from them tonight without their agreement to that, and maybe the agreement to creating something that is more inclusive and a better fit for everyone. Now, they have complained because the board has to operate because of the way that it's set up in the sunshine. Of course, that's great for the public. There are a lot of public dollars tied to this. So I don't know that it's such a bad idea that it's tied to that it has to have that type of oversight. But there is a frustration because the board members can't meet and can't function as most 501c3s function and do things in the way that they've done. So I think that's something that we may want to revisit and consider. Is it best? Tonight, if I had my guess, I would say with this amount of public dollars tied to it, it should remain in the sunshine. And that's just my opinion tonight, but I'm always agreeable to hearing, and if hearing why we might want to change. I reserve the right to change my mind on that. But if we chose to take it back, from my perspective of what the board was saying the other night, I don't think they would be uninclined to say you can have all the money back and take over and take it over yourself. Because the reality is that it does need to be a turnkey project. That is what we told them. So then there are things that they're having to try to raise money for, and some people don't seem to be as committed to that because it may be a little harder than we thought. So let us have the meeting on Wednesday. Let us hash out some of the details, and I'm doing my very best to stand up for our city, because I do believe that certain things that they want are not agreeable to us. And I basically said that we are not going to be allow for a first step to create what do we call it, a tent city that we're responsible for. Those sorts of things are just absolutely unequivocally will not happen. We won't stand for that. And I think, the reality is that, we appreciate all that they've given, but it's nowhere near. It's a smidget of what we've given. So that's something for us to be proud of, and they have to, and I told them, you have to recognize that. The reality is that this project costs a lot more, but it's just like we had a hotel builder that was going to build a hotel on Beachside that was originally $60 million. Within a year or so, it went to $80 or $100 million. It's the nature of the time that we're living in as it relates to construction. And so that should be respected. So many of the things that I think Mr. Jallis has been spending his time working on, trying to, I won't say coerce, but compel the city to pay for, were not really relevant to opening a shelter. You know, there were things, you know, he had things that he could have been working on. You got 100 beds that you know have to be paid for. Certain things that he could have been focusing his attention on, but he was focusing his attention on things that Catholic Charities, quite frankly, the agency that's going to run it, have not really stated those things, at least to me. You know, much of what he stated, they haven't stated. So let us, in conclusion, let us go ahead with this next meeting, but let's develop a contingency plan that could be, might be what Commissioner Gilliland says, but the reality is that it'll be a lot more expensive to operate a 50-bed shelter than it would be to operate a 100-bed shelter per person because of the scales. The scales go down. So we really want to go away from that, you know. We want the scale to be what it is, preferably. But we may want to consider the options of changing the model a little bit. Just let's discuss that and look at different people that you may have that you can talk to about how to run that, because we do want to have a plan, because it's going to be done. In the plan tonight, it's on schedule to be completed by the end of September. Heaven forbid that we have hurricanes, but that might happen. This is Daytona Beach. But whatever the case is, it's going to be finished. We have to be prepared, and a lot of the things that should have been done to have a director haven't been done. So the board has to plan some of those. Dr. Durham is going to work with me again and with the board somewhat to help us to finish those things. So if you have any questions of me, I'll be happy to answer them as best I can. Okay.
Thank you for everything you're doing.
Okay. Yeah, well, my pleasure. It's what we do. We all do. Okay. You may carry on with your next.
My last question or thought was about wages at the city. I know that I just wanted to get an update on if we had any progress on getting a study about the raising the wage, the minimum wage in our city employees, and then also the compression. And I keep going back to the same thing, that I think it's a really strong policy statement for us to make that move. And I mean, my thought would be, I think we as a commission should, you know, tell the manager to go ahead and implement that raise to 15, which I think we said would be under 150,000, you know, in this year's budget, and then in the coming budget and in the coming year, come back with a plan about how we address the compression and make sure that that's fair, and, you know, adjust things maybe even retroactively for the affected people. But I think it's really important that we make that policy statement, if that's a value the other commissioners and Mr. Mayor agree with, because, you know, we're courting businesses that we want to come here. We're courting, you know, citizens that we want to move here. And I think that that's a really strong, positive statement that the commission can make. And as public relations, I think it's an important thing to do. And the cost, again, was so low to what I expected it to be that I feel like it's something we really should do for our employees, and for a statement about where our city is, what our values are, and what we would ask for and expect from businesses relocating to this area. So that's my last kind of ask. I wanted to see where we were on getting that study to talk about the compression, and then if the other commissioners would join me in just asking the manager to go ahead and try to implement the raise to 15 in this budget, and then, you know, in next year's budget, start working on the compression.
So you want us to commit to 100,000 a year now so that we can permanently commit to $1 million a year next year to fix it? You want us to break it this year so we can fix it next year for 10 times the cost?
I want to know where we are on getting, no, I don't agree with the phrase that way.
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, this is a very, very dangerous thing. And I'm like, one of the things, and the mayor's brought this up, of trying to, you know, help our first responders. This would kill any effort that we have to try and raise our first responders up to something where they're not in the middle of the pack in Volusia County, because all the money would be split up so widely across every employee in the city. I mean, this is a very dangerous precedent. And you're talking about cities like Seattle went to $15 an hour. We don't have a cost of living like Seattle. I mean, if you were trying to push $12 an hour, that might be something that might make a little more sense from the scale perspective, but,
We're already
this.
there. I mean, that's the point.
Well, then that's probably where we should be. Then we probably don't, in my opinion, from a policy perspective, we don't need to go down that route. And it doesn't make it makes a irresponsible financial statement from the city that would discourage people from coming here to say, wow, my taxes are going to be really high there because they actually think they're Seattle. I mean, 2/3 of all of our expenses are salaries. So, I mean, it's, without knowing the cost of the initiative, taking that first, stick your toe in the water thing and say, let's bump up, a few people to, from 12 to 15. I mean, that literally does put, people with, little experience in a high school education here right behind a firefighter with a 2-year degree.
Well, let me interject. Why don't we just have him to budget the money? Therefore, you have it budgeted, but we don't execute it until we have the study, and then we can make the decision
My first
at
one,
that
I
time.
would see the
He just wants it budgeted.
study.
But you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
With that, at least he's got the money budgeted in case we then decide that we want it executed, so we can't come back and say, we don't have it budgeted for this year.
Commissioner Gilliland, are you saying that we first focus on our first responders? Are we saying take care of them first, or look at that study first before we look at everybody else?
Yes.
That's what you're saying,
And
right?
for years, we've looked at these comparative analyses to other departments, police and fire in Volusia County, and our men and women are always right in the middle.
Mhm.
And they respond to more calls
Mhm.
and more dangerous
Mhm.
situations.
I agree.
Than
Mhm.
your average, the median police officer firefighter in the county. And I think that we should make the statement I want to make is we really, really appreciate and respect those
Mhm.
people. And we want to make sure that you're not in the middle, you're up,
Right.
you're up at the top.
And I don't want to de-incentivize them. I've heard stories of people leaving, and that's not what I want. We are growing rapidly. We want to be able to entice more firefighters and police officers here. So my support be with you to focus on the first responders first.
I don't think
Well,
that's what I'm talking about at all. I'm
Then
not
we're
saying-
confused.
But diverting 100,000 this year and potentially $1 million next year means that we really can't pursue helping the first responders now because we're going to have to raise the wages of so many people in so many departments across the city to fix compression next year.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off.
That I mean, you're right. The study is the critical part of this, because we have a lot of people that make $30,000, $40,000 a year, and they're the ones who are going to get hurt by this, and they're the ones that are going to need to get a proportionate increase related, that will be similar to what we do for the folks that are getting bumped up to 15. And then then when you do that, there's also going to be a benefit increase that goes along with it. So, I mean, it's not just, the FRS money goes up, the life insurance money goes up, everything, there's a lot, there's small pieces, but when you add them all together, there's a lot. And to go back to agree with you, so we can find a common ground here, the study is critical. And I'm not comfortable doing anything until we have the study.
Well, and I think we should definitely get the study, and that's how I started off. I mean, in the very beginning, when I talked about this before we found out, I think we all thought it was going to be more than it turned out to be to just get to that 15. So I think the first thing to do is find out what it's really going to cost. But I just want to clarify and make a couple things clear. One, raising some people's wages doesn't hurt anybody else. We're not taking from some people to give to other people.
I agree with that.
So even if someone doesn't get a raise, I don't think they're hurt by it. They don't get a raise, but they're not hurt. I'm not talking about taking away from somebody and reallocating to someone else. So that's the first thing. It's not a zero-sum game where it's not a zero-sum game where some people's loss is necessary for someone else to gain. And I think it's well known that I support our first responders. I think that goes without saying. This has nothing to do with, in my mind, about first responders. That's a separate inquiry, and I've always been with you, Commissioner Gilliland, on making sure that our people are well paid, if not the best paid in the area, and making sure that they have the tools and resources they need and are well paid. It's not, I see those as distinct issues, and I don't want to mix the two in a conversation so that people feel that raising wages for our city employees is somehow at the expense of our first responders. I think we can and should do both things. If it came down to we only had X amount of money and we could not accomplish both things, and that would be a different inquiry. But we don't know that to be the case until we see how much it's going to cost. And, you know, again, I think we need to know how much it's going to cost, but I don't think anything will be at the expense or the exclusion of anyone else. And I certainly wouldn't endorse anyone losing or going backwards. It would just be maybe not gaining as much as some people. And unfortunately, I think that's the nature of the beast. I mean, some people are going to benefit in the short term more as a percentage than other people, but I don't think that's bad. And as a final thing, yeah, I agree, we're not Seattle, but I don't think that $12 an hour is an aspirational wage or where we should pat ourselves on the back and say that's good enough. We hear a lot from the residents who come up here about the difficulty in finding housing and the prices for the housing. And at $15 an hour, our average one-bedroom apartment is still very, very expensive. So, you know, I don't think wages have kept up with the cost of expenses and the growing expenses, especially in housing here in Daytona. So I guess to agree with you, I really want to see that study and really want to know what that is. I don't want to lose sight of it, and I'll leave it at that and quit while I'm somewhat ahead. Or at least
Commissioner Delgado, you've been a great champion for first responders, and I don't mean that at all to seem as though
when my house catches fire tonight, I need them there.
No, I don't mean to sound like you aren't that, because you always have been, and I respect you for that. My concern is if we can't, I don't think we're going to be able to afford to do both. And without the study, we don't have the information to make an informed decision. So the study, once again, I agree with you, is critical to this initiative.
I'm going to let the manager go first. I agree that it's just not cut and dry, and I do believe that this 150,000, at the end of the day, we're going to be able to afford that. And I'm not knocking first responders. I'm not choosing one over the other. But we have to recognize that people who are making a certain amount of money, a lot of those people have four-year educations and degrees, and they're not making $32,000 a year either. So it's not when we don't want to pit these parties against each other. So the reason that, and I believe that this is what we should do, we should direct him to say, have this money available. And then once we get the study, we can make an informed decision, because that's what everybody wants to make. A decision that is informed for everybody. Because I'm not going one against the other, because both of those parties are extremely important to me. Those who are working for the least amount of money, because I go to places and I see these people who are doing jobs, and they're not policemen, they're not firefighters, but they're working in our parks, in our recreation, they're working with our kids, they're ensuring that they're developing and they're evolving, they're doing some important jobs. They're doing a lot of physical and manual labor around this city to make sure that things get fixed and get repaired, so all of our employees are valuable. So I'll turn that over and let you.
Mr. Mayor, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, first responders are absolutely critical to this community, just as the people who work on the water lines, the sewer lines, the garbage, everything else that happens to make this a quality community. So it's it's the entire package. It's not one piece or another piece. And I think that's what everybody's saying they want to look at. And you're a little bit ahead of the game, because we're not quite there with having the financial data really to make any kind of a decision, other than the fact that you would like for us to look from a policy standpoint at if we can raise it to a minimum wage of $15, then how do we address the other issues with fairness with the rest of the employees? And that's we'll do our best to get back to you with a plan that does that. Now, we have not selected the consultant yet. We are working on that part of it, but we will come back with a consultant to bring that forward.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Commissioner May?
My question is, how are things going in the other zones with regard to dormitory housing? And when I say dormitory housing, I mean, are you having any issues or complaints of, let's say, more than 6 people living in a home that's not suited for 6 or more people? Or more than 6, I should say. Do you have any issues or complaints, or is it just my zone 3, the only one impacted?
You have the bulk of them,
You always
but
have.
I have, there's one in Bayberry, and there's one in Georgetown or Pine Lake that are the sober living facilities.
Okay.
I mean, so those are the only ones that I know of. But there does seem to be a concentration, really from Bellevue up along US 1 off,
Right.
Bellevue up to the city.
And to be clear, I'm not saying sober living homes or treatment centers. What I'm specifically saying are people or homes where it's greater than 6 people, because that is kind of the focus. I say this only as a point of definition as it relates to my trash, my code enforcement, my parking, the number of people in the community, number of people entering and exiting the community and the roadways. That's how I'm looking at it. So would you say it's that? You have quite a few?
I would say that is not, it hasn't infiltrated the whole zone, but there are, I get complaints out of every community. I've got about 6 or 7 different fairly organized communities in the west side, and there are, the interesting thing is, a lot of them are Riddle students, and they're extremely well behaved. But it's the cars.
Right.
That's what gets everybody
it always
upset.
is.
And the trash.
LPGA, Bayberry, the issue, there is, people parking on the street, and it's clear when you have people that are not, that are breaking the, no more than 2 unrelated folks living
Right.
in a
Right.
dwelling.
Chief Capri, you look like you're ready with something over there. Oh, okay, just checking. And so I'm just curious, I would like to very much, in my zone, start to really work toward resolving that. I think it's impacting the residents. I think it's impacting code enforcement. I think it's impacting the look. I'm getting multiple complaints in certain areas about trash, people moving in, moving out, which makes no sense if it's just 2 or 3 people living there. But if we have 8, 10 people living there, they're moving out different times, and I'm having a problem with it. So that is where I would like, as much as possible, to start focusing. And I guess by saying it publicly, I'm letting people know that this is where we're headed in Zone 3. So be prepared for it.
It's really throughout the city.
Yeah.
It's not just, you've got some concentrated areas where you have multiples, in a close proximity, and that's.
I'd like to bring that up. What is do we have anything we can do about the number of homes we can have, or number of dorm living places we can have in an areas, or any ordinance that we have with regard to that?
We're going to, Chief, why don't you kind of address it, but I think there's one thing, code-wise, we're probably going to have to take a look at the code and see how it's addressed in the code. But there are things that Chief can do, but there are other issues we're going to have to address and be successful with this.
Craig Capri, Chief of Police, we're actually meeting tomorrow at 2 o'clock to discuss that. We're ready on our end. We're just going to meet with Bob and legal tomorrow, and we're going to go forward, and we're going to solve that problem just like we solved the panhandling problem. Issues that make Daytona Beach look trashy and bad, those days are over. I think we've took the lead on a lot of this stuff, and we're going to clean up the city. We got a lot of development coming in here, so that's next on our agenda. Our next initiative is to get rid of all this. I'll be nice. We're going to get rid of the problem.
Okay. All right.
It'll be resolved.
Address the problem.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That was number 1 on my list. Number 2 on my list was this weekend I went to the Halifax Historic Museum. They had an event there. I like the fact that they spoke about all parts of the history of Daytona Beach were addressed. It wasn't just the east side, it was also the west side of Daytona Beach was addressed. The histories were different, but both were represented quite nicely there. So I highly encourage you to go to the museum. Take a look at it. If you need events to be done there, please go ahead and utilize the space. And also, thank you again to staff for all of their help. I appreciate the updates, and I think you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilliland?
Let's see, we had the Zone 4 cleanup, and once again, it was a half Zone 4, half Zone 5 cleanup. We did Strickland Range Road up to both east and west of Clyde Morris. We have the east, I have the west part of that. So, but we were focusing on the school. What happened last time around was we did around Palm Terrace and Bill France in that general area. So we had it on Saturday, so I want to thank everybody who came out. There was a number of folks, Charles Bryan, code enforcement, we had a few residents. Pierre Lewis from the Midtown Board was there, had a great conversation with him. It's just kind of nice to walk around and, granted you're picking up trash, but it's, you always have a great conversation with whoever you're walking with. And, but it was a nice event, and I want to appreciate or express my appreciation for the folks in Public Works, Fire Department, Code, everybody that came out and helped support that. Great event for the Browns yesterday. Unfortunately, I got to go to Orlando and have a statewide meeting of the TPO chair people, so that was a lot of fun too. But maybe next time I'll be able to attend. The only other thing I wanted to talk about was I'm getting some weird smoke signals about the Veterans Museum and the Rec Center, and what I'm starting to hear is that there could potentially be some folks at the museum that are thinking we're going to drop $500,000 to fix the rec center and give it to them. And I just, my understanding of where we are is we've got the study that's going to go on, and we're going to determine, number one, can the building be salvaged, or is it too far gone? It's a very old building. It is not, I don't know if Mark Lane's here, but they keep showing the Tortugas office building instead of showing the rec center whenever he writes an article, because the rec center is just this boring rectangular thing, and the Tortugas building's actually got a nice architecture to it. But, my understanding is we're going to get through the study. If it can't be saved, so be it. If it can be saved, how much is it going to cost? We don't have any money budgeted this year. We're talking a lot about where we're putting money. Nobody put on their strategic planning priority list dumping a bunch of money into the rec center. That means we've got to go to places like Racing Rec and Echo. I think the Echo cycle is fall.
August.
So, we're probably, if we get to that point and we make the application and we get an award, then we put out an RFP like spring of 2020 to get construction started in the summer of 2020 and have it open in like 2021. That's the best case scenario as I see it. It's a building that has not been missed in the 7 years that it's been closed, other than a handful of people that have come up here. Clearly, until we started talking about tearing it down, nobody ever said, there were like two people that would talk about it. Being old isn't necessarily historic. There's a guy that I work with who recalls riding his bike down there and watching surf movies during the summertime back in like the 60s. He goes, yeah, that's a nice memory. He's also a general contractor. He goes, but that building wasn't in great shape then. I can't imagine what it's like now. You're going to end up tearing it down. I mean, I'm not, I was very outspoken when the item came before us to tear it down. We have, we can't spend money on everything that feels good. And we just went through this about the wages. And we don't know the answer to that question yet. And if we can do both, great. That would be an amazing thing. I'm just worried that we can't. That's a lot more important to me than putting tax dollars into the rec center. And we all know that when we start coming up short, the place we go and steal from is leisure services. And that bucket is about empty at this point. So, we just need to be careful, and we just got to recognize that we weren't elected to make the easy decisions. We were elected to make the hard ones. And this rec center could easily turn into be one of those hard decisions that we have priorities that are greater than that rec center. We don't have the funds to really be able to move forward with it. I believe the Veterans Museum, which is, a wonderful place. And it's funny, Billy Wheeler's name's gotten thrown into this. I talked to her this morning, actually, at our TPO executive committee meeting. And, I do have a regular job, too. I don't just do this in the TPO thing, by the way. But, I asked her and she had gone to some event there with Michael Waltz, and there was some conversation about we're going to have to move. Where do you know of anything? And she just said, well, I don't know what the city's doing with that rec center. And that was it. There was no advocating that they use it. Or there was just hey, why don't you ask a question? But, obviously she's county, and there may be, Echo was administered by the county. So there could be some indirect relationship there. But I just want to make sure that there isn't any misunderstanding in the community about kind of where this stands, because I think we'd all love it if the money fell out of the sky and we fixed it and the museum was able to move there. That clearly isn't going to happen. So we got to fight the fight and see where we get to with the with the opportunity, and I'm not, this isn't very high. It's certainly not a top 10 for me for next fiscal year's priority. So.
Well, I'll just address it since I mentioned it at the last meeting, and I didn't put it on my priority list for city funds. I want to know as quickly as we can what the condition of the building is. Let's not wait. Let's give us a plan of when we can expect to know what it costs. But there are many ways, those guys at the Veterans Museum they've struck a chord with a lot of people in the community with what they've been able to achieve. And it is conceivable that they may be able to generate money that we may not know about. And some of it may be, Ms. Wheeler is supportive of that. So I don't know what she said, but she is supportive of that and has told them that she's supportive. And so whether it's ECHO or Race and Rec or private donors, I have stated, and I will state tonight, that I don't have an appetite for the city to fund the building repairs to give it to that process or that purpose. Although that purpose for me is purpose enough that if we can get the building fixed, that I would be at the ceiling close enough, I'm close enough to the ceiling, I would jump up to the ceiling probably and want to see that happen, because I happen to believe that it is an ideal location for that particular project. So we need to know and have the information. We can't make decisions without the information. So this is one that needs to be expedited. Would you give us, I'll let you at your plan tell us where we are and give us some expectations as to where you think, how long it's going to take for this, for us to get this information.
Just one more thing, Mr. Chisholm. I mean, there might be some other opportunities out there. I mentioned the Halifax Historic Museum, but there might be some other partnerships that could still keep this facility downtown, because I think it's a good location for it, but not necessarily the rec center. But I think we should explore some other partnerships that we can get into downtown as well. And that way, as we develop Riverfront Park even, there are different places that you go along the way as you walk through there. That's all.
Yeah, okay.
And I agree. I agree with everything you said, and I'm hopeful that we can get to, something that works for them. And, they are, as I understand it, they are exploring other partnerships, for, for that area. It's a good location. It would be nice to have the bridge, the Veterans Park, that Josh Wagner and Billy Wheeler are both very instrumental in raising funds for, and the museum, all in that kind of, contained area. That would be very nice. I just don't think we're there yet. I think we all did get an email from a gentleman from the museum, and I did respond back to him individually, Bob, not to everybody. And I kind of laid out that timeline that this is what we're looking at, because we don't have any funds available, and I laid out ECHO, and I got a thank you back, I believe, but that was about it.
Okay.
But there is some. I got a call yesterday from somebody who said that the gentlemen who run it, who are in their 70s and 80s, are thinking that they will do the renovations themselves. That they will be up on the roof, re-roofing. And this person who called me asked not to be named and said that that person did not believe that was a good idea. So,
they're closer to their 90s, and some are in their 90s. So 70s and 80s are giving them a few years. I love them. So,
but I agree with you. It is a great asset.
Yeah,
and
it is.
If there's something we can do to help facilitate a move for them, then I'm all for it.
Yeah.
In this particular case, I think the timeline I laid out is kind of where we are. But we'll see. Maybe something. Maybe a miracle will happen. Lord knows those folks deserve it.
Yeah, they do.
And good night.
Okay, Commissioner Henry.
I want to piggyback off of what Aaron said, and I want to thank him for making sure that we're on top of taking care of our employees on the financial front and bringing that back to us, because it really had slipped my mind. And I think that we're in a relationship with the people that are employed by the city of Daytona Beach, and in that relationship, they're looking to us to do the right thing by them. And nobody wants to be in a relationship built on struggle love. So I don't think that any of us want it to be either or. Either to fire either our first responders or our workers who work for the citizens of Daytona Beach. And so I do want to see the study. I would love to see the study. And also, I would love to see if we can find some kind of middle ground or common ground or work up to $15. But something does need to happen. And I do know our lower tiered paid employees are struggling. And hence the idea of a struggle-love type relationship. They're struggling to make it. And that's not the image that we want to portray to anyone, as far as that's how we feel about the people who work for us in our community. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, I didn't mention much about the First Shelter Board, because I do want to wait for the next meeting before I speak on that. So I wasn't ignoring that issue, just wanting to see more about what's going to happen before I jump out there and put my my 2 cents out there. Zone 5 community cleanup is coming, and it is coming Saturday, June 1st. The areas that we're going to be working on is Mason Avenue, the South Part, Peachtree Avenue, Redwood Street, and Hollywood Avenue West. So if you're interested in coming out and helping us, we would love to see you there on Saturday, June 1st. And I want to thank whoever is responsible for this, because this is so amazing. I know it's simple, it seems simple, but to me, it really gives me a good idea of projects that we have been working on, and getting opportunities to see those, where we are in those projects, getting opportunities to see whether or not those projects are completed, and before and after pictures where we can see that the project was a very much needed project. Especially this on the reconstruction of Dr. MLK Boulevard. That's a wonderful project, and I'm so glad to see it. And things that you normally may vote on and then you forget that they're coming. And these are good reminders that they're here, they're coming, they've been completed, where we are with those projects. So good job with this, the city manager's update. This is awesome. And I think that concludes my comments for tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Traeger?
Well, I too want to congratulate the city manager on this. I did before. I think it's marvelous. Wish we had had it a long time ago. One of the criticisms I've heard about the city for a long time is that we don't take care of the buildings we have. Really, in fact, the rec center, that is a gem of a building. I don't know how much it'll cost, and I don't think anybody does yet to really fix it up. But it has been neglected, and it's not really necessary that we neglect our buildings until they have to be torn down. Like someone said, there are different avenues, partnerships, whatever we can use. But I think that would be a magnificent situation for it, what with the Veterans Memorial Bridge and the historic and the Halifax Historical across the street. I saw one thing in here, the Fallen Officer Ceremony on May 9th at 4 p.m. at Valor. I've been to a couple of them, and they're very moving, and you really do come away with appreciation of those who put their lives on the line for us all. So it's open to the public. If you get a chance, it's a good place to go. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and thank you to all of you tonight. I know I've talked a lot, and that won't end, so continue with that right now. No, two things I want to mention that are important. One, attainable housing. We've been talking about that a great deal. We have to keep that on our radar. Let's remember that there are a litany of ways to do that. Some include, and we don't have to do this, but one of the things that we are not doing is, with all of the construction, we had developer here tonight, Minto. They're going to build maybe 400 or 500 new homes in addition to the 3,500 that they're slated to build. One of the things that we do not do as a city is that we don't say to Minto, because you're building those homes, that you have to help us to achieve affordable housing by paying into a pot. That happens in other places, in other municipalities, and it could be an option for us. But since it's not an option right now, we haven't made that choice. Not sure I want to make that choice. The other choice that we could make is that when we have developers who are willing to build attainable housing, then since we're not doing that, we could give them a greater sense of tax abatement, whereas they don't have to pay taxes for a certain amount of time because they are building attainable housing. It's one or the other for me, though. If we're going to get people to invest in it, either the people who are building homes, we have to say we're going to charge you to help us, or we will allow and give an abatement to those that are willing to build this type of housing, because they can't make the same amount of profit as someone who's building a $200,000 or $300,000 house because of the nature of how developments work. So that's one thing. I just want to make sure I lay that out to us, because when we see that, we have to be prepared to make that type of a commitment, because it costs. At the end of the day, if we decide to do that, that costs us money, because it's less money that we're taking in when people do new construction. Second thing is, the city attorney and I had a meeting with a couple of folks from a legal team, and we had a conversation with them about joining a lawsuit that would allow us to be a party to suing manufacturers of addictive prescription drugs. And I'm going to allow him to highlight the possibilities of that and how that might be something that we might or might not want to join. I think he and the city manager also had a meeting, a similar meeting. They weren't sure how that might benefit us as a city. What makes me bring it to your attention also tonight is that the recent situation that happened at, was it Walgreens? It's clearly an indication that this impacts our community in a deep and profound way. And one of the problems with it is that we have a challenge in proving how it impacts our community, which would impact whether or not we would be the beneficiaries of a successful lawsuit. But when that happened, I realized, I say, this has to affect our police department, our fire department, and other areas of our community more than we can currently quantify. So we have to maybe hear from them and figure out how we can quantify how it's impacting us. And then we as a city commission would have to determine whether we want to join the lawsuit. And time is somewhat of the essence that we make a decision. So I'll let you chime in and share some of the details and nuances of
Sure.
what's
I'd
going
actually hoped to have the attorney available tonight to speak to this, Mr. Vicarious, but we couldn't quite get it together with our timeframes for the agenda. But for next meeting, we do plan on having the attorney here to make a presentation to the commission to see if it's something the commission would be interested in. It's Jim Vicarious. He's an attorney out of DeLand, and he's working with a number of attorneys throughout the country, really, in representing states and hospitals and counties primarily against the pharmaceutical manufacturers related to the opioid crisis. So he's going to come to the commission next week and make a presentation and see if that's something he'd be interested in. The city's damages are different than what a hospital would have, for instance, or a county who has a jail that houses people with drug addictions. Our damages would be related, as you say, Mayor, more to law enforcement or first responder sort of cost related to the opioid crisis. So there is a damage there. We've had a difficult time quantifying what that would be. Certainly experts would be involved. One positive thing about the arrangement we would have with Mr. Vicarious is that it would be a contingency fee, so there'd be nothing out of pocket to the city for being involved in the suit. And the anticipated lawsuit would be to join the other suits in a sort of a massive consolidated suit that's being handled in Ohio, I believe, in federal court.
That's correct.
So with your permission, we'll put that on the agenda for next time.
Okay. Well, does anyone disagree with that? Being on there. Okay, we'll have a conversation about it. I believe the last thing, Brown and Brown flag raising ceremony was spectacular. And the renditions thus far of the building and the amount of energy and economic vibrance that the 600 to 1,000 employees, and they are currently hiring people from Daytona Beach right now, from this area, to work at the facility. And so I know from time to time we've received pushback, but what that's going to do for downtown is simply phenomenal. It was a beautiful setting and well done. They had Bethune-Cookman Band playing, made comments about how, where we were right there at the edge of MMB, and just discussed how it would lead right to the college. And, my dream is that this building will help us to take a new path all the way to BCU of beauty, aesthetic, refinement, and redoing some of MMB. But it was wonderful, and we're in for a great new addition to our community very soon. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. The ballots for the sales tax, I believe, are in the mail, so they'll be available to our citizens concerning the half-cent sales tax. And the ballot collection box will be delivered to the cities throughout Volusia tomorrow. So we should be seeing the ballot box show up here. So if anybody has a ballot, they can deposit the ballot in the ballot box at City Hall if they have the opportunity to do it.
Okay.
Let's see.
And Jim, they can also be mailed back, right?
Or they can mail it back, or they can.
Yeah.
There's going to be several locations they can actually return them to.
Okay.
The other city halls within the county. Just to comment on this, the manager's update. This is compiled by our PIO staff, the ones that work for us in our office. They do a great job. The beauty of it, I think, for you and for all of us, is you're getting up-to-date information. Most of the things that are in our publication is something that occurred this week or even today. It's that current, and it enables us to give it to you so that when somebody asks you about any one of those things, it's quite likely it's there if it's something that's important and it's before us. But Susan Sorbonne and the staff that work with her do an outstanding job of putting that together.
And this is an outgrowth of the manager's evaluation. And, this is what we asked. I asked specifically for this type of an update, and it is, I agree, it's beautiful.
Can I ask a question of the attorney, please? Recently, I've had people contact me from other areas. Is more than one city commissioner allowed to attend an event? And I say that different neighborhood watches have asked me to attend in different communities. Am I allowed to attend that, or do I just stay in one area, stay in my lane type thing? Is that where I stay?
Commissioners are allowed to attend public events freely. The only prohibition is against communicating at those events with each other. That would violate the Sunshine Law.
Okay, so if I have an invitation from another community, I can enter in and...
And to be clear, the communication between each other would only be as it relates to items that may come before the commission. So certainly you can speak with other commissioners at other public events. So
Okay.
you are free to attend those.
All right, thank you.
Yes, you can attend all the community meetings in the community. You work for all the
Okay.
residents of Daytona Beach. And, you know, so you're free to be in the meetings.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, just to add something to the mail-in ballots, as soon as the supervisor of elections office delivers them to City Hall, I'll let the city manager know so he can let you know that they're in place in the lobby.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just to follow up, I want to be sure I'm getting this right. I think from what I hear is you want me to look toward a contingency plan for the shelter in any event that could be used if we, for any purpose. Is that right?
Yes. Okay. And I want to make note of this. The Volusia County Supervisor of Election, Lisa Lewis, will be featured guest on noon Wednesday, May 8th on Joy 106.3 for the city's weekly radio show hosted by our own Dr. L. Ronald Durham. You have anything, sir?
Mr. Mayor, just to follow up on what Jim just asked, so it would be a contingency plan for anything that's allowed under the county agreement, because I don't want to get in a situation where it's a different use and we got to give them that $2.5 million back. Yeah.
Okay. All right, this meeting is adjourned. We will convene with our public comments.
Nicholson, and on deck is Tony Servance.
John, you awake?
He forgot his notes. He's coming.
John Nicholson, 413 North Cranberry Avenue. One, I want to remind you of, so it doesn't get lost, Jack, the Juvenile Assessment Center, the sheriff, our former police chief, recommends that we do it. Our police chief recommends that we do it. There is land available, a building available. It won't cost us anything. If we're smart, we'll get some money out of the county and have them pay to rent it. But I think if it's needed, if it's good for our kids, we should do it. Secondly, your TV caption that we have now, besides the spelling, that they can't spell, the wording is different. It has nothing to do with what somebody's saying. If you look at it and you're talking about a house and they talk about a horse, it's totally different. People are talking about. So we really should look into it. And third, first step, I think we really ought to take a look at the money. When we started, we were talking about all kinds of things, tinsel, hard, portables, on this side of the property, on that side of the road. All of these things, when you put them together, that is not an expensive building. I think it was $5 million to start with. When we originally did it, the numbers have changed, 500, 250, 100. When we look at this thing, we're not really coalesce. I mean, it's changed so much. When you look at, it's the commission, it's the mayor, it's the manager, it's Dr. Durham, it's the board, it's Gellis, it's Catholic Charities. Who's what, where, and how? The people don't know. I don't know. And until we decide what we want, we're not going to get anywhere. When we look at it, people are saying, oh, we have to do Pottinger compliant. South Daytona said, well, we got in with this for Pottinger compliant. And then the city manager shows up and says, oh, no, this can't be used for Pottinger compliant, which throws all of that money out. People are looking at it as a jail diversion. They're looking at it as a homeless shelter. They're looking at it as a one-stop, come as you are. We have to define what this is. And it's not fair to have them dangling for the length of time that they have. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Tony Servance, and on deck is Dino Paspalakis.
Tony Servance, 914 Avery Street. First of all, let me start out by thanking the commissioners, the city managers, for all that you have done for the Juneteenth Festival. It's that time again. So I'm standing before you with the reminder that the email has been sent out to you in regards to contributions, and we would greatly appreciate any contribution that you would give to us this year. The festival, the banquet, just the Juneteenth atmosphere has always been good for the Daytona community, and they really come out and support it and they enjoy it. So Linda McGee sends her best regards to all of you, and we look forward to you all giving us a donation. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Okay. Our next speaker is Dino Paspalakis, and on deck is Marjorie Johnson.
Hi, Dino Paspalakis, 565 Riverside Drive. I'm here to speak on two issues. First one, I'm here to speak on behalf of the Beachside Redevelopment Board. They asked me to come before this commission and ask you guys to allow us to explore the possibility of having something called fees in lieu of parking for the beachside. In other words, to give you an example, like the situation with the bungee that was built right near the boardwalk area, while we love the fact that it's there and everything like that, there was some required parking spots that they needed to build. I think it was like 20 or something like that. What other cities do is they take the average spot of what it would cost to build a parking structure, and sometimes they come up with a figure like $20,000 per space, and give the developer the option of not having those spaces on his property and paying the city that $20,000 a space in lieu of having the actual parking on site. Then that fund could go towards building a parking garage, in the future. So you could actually build money, to assure a parking facility. And I'm going to speak to the second issue. If you have any questions, I'm here. The second issue is I know before the planning board, an item on the food trucks came, and I was at the workshop. The workshop talked about not having in the tourist area. The planning board talked about 250 feet from some arterial roads. I'm not sure how it plays out. I'm hoping that it's consistent with what the commission directed staff to do. If it's not, I'll obviously see you at the next commission. I try to, get an idea but like I said, it's a little, it's a change, but like last weekend, we had the food trucks on Oceanfront Park, which I've never seen that before. I mean, in the past, there was a food war with food trucks, and I really wanted to ignore that because that was a nationally televised event. But on the Jeep thing, I really don't think that we should be dealing with food trucks on Oceanfront Park. That should not be allowed. But anyways, answer any questions. Got it.
You did.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Before we move on to our next speaker, just to clarify, so it's $300 from you, Mayor, to the Juneteenth, and $150 from you, Commissioner Henry? Okay. So our next speaker is Marjorie Johnson, and on deck is Matt Reinhardt.
It's sad that we have so many people missing here tonight. When you put our comments to the end, Marjorie Johnson, 122 South Keith Street, these people are leaving the podium. The city manager's gone. Aaron DeGardo, Gilliland left. He's back. Bennett, Henry, Paula Reed, all of them are missing. This is really pathetic. Racism is an extremely complex problem. It's found all over the city of Daytona Beach. For 4 decades, I have led the civil rights battle to destroy barriers to equality for all Americans. Considerable progress has been made, but racism and discrimination is still going on. You do not appreciate or respect our voters who put you here in office. We have no accessibility, no transparency, and no credibility here at this city. I saw today where the man resigned from the first step board. He was a good man. I knew him because I'm on 3 county boards. I was just elected by Johnson, who I supported, to serve on the library board. I'm the only black there, and the Children and Services and Human Services Board, and the Orange Avenue Bridge. Aaron is doing a good job. He's talking about housing, homelessness, and wages for our workers. We need more people like him. We need to change the whole setup here at City Hall. Personal attacks on our taxpaying residents should not be allowed. And we need you to answer our questions. We're not getting that. I am not going to vote for this half-cent tax. Because as I look around, and especially on Martin Luther King from Orange Avenue to Checkers and front of Payne's all cracked up, big holes. disorderly conduct by the city manager, Mayor Hendry, any of you will not be tolerated. I do not pledge allegiance to a flag here. I do not pray with you people because I know that there is no justice for all. I stated earlier that we do not appreciate the fact that you do not respect the people and the voters who put you here in this office. So it took you, 2 years and 2 months to evaluate the city manager. That means your job is not getting done. You're getting a salary. We want you to do your work. And we are very displeased with what's going on here. Disorderly conduct. She reads something else, well, I'm going to read it to you. Stop abusing our people and stop putting...
Okay, our next speaker is Matt Reinhardt, and on deck is Jenny Nazak.
Good evening, sir. Matthew Reinhardt. I live at 317 North Paul Revere in the Georgetown subdivision. I came here tonight. I'm also a member of the Georgetown Homeowners Association. We've had an issue with traffic on Yorktown Boulevard. It's become more and more of a cut-through from Bevel Road to Clyde Morris. More and more people are seeing that and figuring that out. I understand that there used to be several stop signs through that subdivision before. Now there are 3, which I'm fine with, but some of the people thought about what else can we do about traffic control for that area. I don't think adding more stop signs is the idea because they just run them now. While during the meeting I was looking at my security cameras, which I live on Paul Revere facing Yorktown, and the amount of people that just blow through the stop sign is ridiculous. Several people have almost been hit by vehicles that are riding their bikes. There are children out in that area. Chief Capri, you guys are doing an awesome job when you can, but I know that traffic control is, I understand, but I didn't know if speed bumps or something like that could be looked into. I know there's a lot more wear and tear on that road also.
We need to make note of that.
317 is my address, Paul Revere.
There's no 7. Let's take his address and have staff look into it.
Yeah, we can certainly look into doing speed humps, and whenever we hear this. Chief.
Yeah.
Okay, just real quickly, just recently, I get a kick out of traveling down Yorktown doing 25 miles an hour, which is what the speed limit is. And people are now passing me on Yorktown. I mean, which is, that's a residential area, so it's very dangerous. So they have no regard for the speed limit and whatnot.
We can certainly work on those 2 things, speed humps and getting a couple more speed traps out there.
Okay.
Thank you. Hopefully that'll help.
Yeah.
Okay. Our next speaker is Jenny Nazak, and on deck is Ken Strickland.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jenny Nazak, 501 Harvey. Just an update on Earth Day week. Earth Day week was great in Daytona Beach. The Campbell Middle School Earth Day was a wonderful event. A lot of city employees were there performing the environmental education aspect and nice model for our youth. And there was an elm tree donated to the sycamore tree donated to the school. It was really, really nice event and nice to be there and hopefully get to be there again next year. My little Earth Day event at the Cinematique went well. It was a lot of quality participation, and thank you again to Commissioner May for your support. And I do plan to have that again too. The Daytona Beach Brewing Company came and approached me about pouring beer samples at my obscure little event, so they helped make it more lively. And I'm grateful to the People's Community Agriculture Network for supplying delicious herbal tea. So, and then the environment in general, it's an ongoing thing, and I'm really privileged to try to weave it into our ongoing conversation because everything we do with the environment helps our public health, and it also helps our infrastructure. For example, street trees can greatly reduce the burden on our stormwater infrastructure. And also street trees have a measurable impact on public health and wellness, and also on crime. So it's very interesting, the interplay between environmental factors and some of the more expensive and challenging aspects of our infrastructure and public finance. So I'm going to keep studying and learning and weaving this into the conversation. And then, let's see, speaking of that, on Friday at the Breakers Environmental Oceanfront Learning Center, which I always forget the order of those words, Breakers Oceanfront Park Environmental Learning Center. I'll be giving a talk on ocean-friendly gardening. And this is a thing that everyday people can do. It increases their health, increases the beauty of neighborhoods, reduces the burden on stormwater infrastructure, as well as reducing pollution of our waterways. I mean, it's major, major stuff. And then next Wednesday, I get to be on my little Green Daytona radio segment with Dr. Durham, and that'll be fun. Being on there with the supervisor of elections should be fun, too. So,
Good.
thank you all, and have a nice evening.
Thank you, Ms. Nazak. Excellent.
Whoops. Our next speaker is Ken Strickland, and on deck is Doyle Lewis.
Ken Strickland, 1208 North Halifax. I've been to a lot of the First Step Shelter meetings downstairs. Originally, the board was entrusted to oversee the construction and operation of the First Step Shelter. That was right on the city's website for a while. It's no longer there. We started out with tensile strength, $2.5 million. Then we decided we had to have brick and mortar. The cost ballooned to about $6 million now. Then we had P&S Paving out there doing the site prep. Next thing you know, we have a dirt deal going on, and we're going to dig a lake, and now we're digging 2 lakes. They're selling the dirt and paying us a pittance of what it's really worth, way below market value. Then we find out it's not going to be turnkey, that the board's got to raise the money to furnish this place. And we hired some people prematurely, I think, with Mark and with the Catholic Charities, and started paying them. The fingerprint of Mr. Chisholm, who is conspicuously absent, is on all of these things right here. And I think that you guys work for us, he works for y'all. I would respectfully ask that y'all hold him accountable for these snafus on this deal. That's a lot of money, and he needs to be held responsible for it. He's the one that did it.
Okay, our final speaker for this evening is Doyle Lewis.
Where do I begin? Doyle Lewis, Daytona Beach, United States. I'm going to start right off the bat. Traffic signals at Champion Drive have been on the ticket back and forth and around with the builder since 2004 with a developer. Now we're going to have a homeless shelter on 92. The last couple times I was out there, I almost got ran over trying to get to the bus stop across the street. The traffic on 92 and around Interstate 4 is terrible. And we're going to put 50 to 100 to 150 homeless people out there. It's right by the jail. They're speeding. Sorry, but they are. The homeless shelter. It always was supposed to be a major shelter for singles. It was never supposed to be a jail diversion program. Get that straight. That's when you began it. That's how you started getting the county and the city and the homeless people this thing. I completely agree with the last speaker. The city manager runs everything on this board. I've watched every single person look at him and say, what do I do next? That's a big cookie. Now, the last thing I'm going to speak on is the workforce housing. The cluster homes that are being projected out there are cluster homes for people who do not want to do much maintenance. That's why they put cluster homes together. It's like an association. Workforce housing needs to be addressed with that. That's in competition with the homeless shelter. Right there. Bam. Sorry. Gotcha.
Good night.